my name is Celebrity, and today I'm going to show you how to crochet a halter top. Now I did make a beginner-friendly crochet halter top tutorial last year, but this one's a little bit different. For the other one, it was much shorter and it was more of a bikini top as opposed to just a regular crop top. This one's more of a crop top, and if you make it a little bit longer than mine, then it might even be a regular top. I'm also using a double crochet as opposed to a single crochet that I used for the other one, and the reason I'm bringing all this up is because in addition to that tutorial, I also made a written blog post about it too. So if you learn better with written patterns or diagram patterns, that is available to you as well. And if you do decide to follow the blog post written pattern as opposed to this tutorial, but still want to make this style halter top, all you have to change about the written pattern is switch from single crochet to double crochet and then also make the top longer. So if you are interested in making this top via this tutorial, then keep on watching. I will go as slow as I can for you, so this is going to be as beginner friendly as I could make it, and I'm sure you could do it. I believe in you. And if you are a complete beginner to crochet, I also have a crocheting for beginners video that I will link in the description box below. That also comes with a blog post for written tutorial on how to crochet. So without further ado, let's get started. For this project, I'm using size 4 yarn from the brand I Love This Yarn, and it is in the color Antique Teal, and it is 100% acrylic. Also, the hook that I'm going to use for this project is size 5mm. The first step is to create a slip knot with your yarn, and from the slip knot you're going to chain a chain that is long enough to cover from one side of your ribs to the other. And what I mean by that is you need to chain a chain that is long enough to cover from this part of your body all the way over to this part of your body. And of course it's going to be different for everyone. For me it was about 75 chains if I recall correctly, but depending on your size you may need to make more or less chains. So again, it completely depends on your body type and your size, and that's how many chains that you need to make. So just continue making chains until you put the chain against your body like this, and it wraps around you to the points where I pointed out earlier. This is exactly what I do every time I make a crochet top. I just chain as many chains as it takes for it to fit nicely, and although the top goes down here, I always just measure the widest part of my ribs, which is more towards my breasts, which I think that's the widest part. But yeah, so that's where I measure whenever I make a crochet top. And after you've made that chain that is long enough to cover from that point to the other point of your body, then you're going to go back on that chain with a double crochet. And a double crochet is yarn over through the stitch, yarn over, back through the stitch, yarn over through 2 loops, then yarn over through the last 2 loops. And that's what a double crochet is. So again, yarn over through the stitch, yarn over, back through the stitch, and you're left with 3 loops on your hook. You're going to yarn over, go through 2 loops, then yarn over, go through the last 2 loops. Yarn over through the stitch, yarn over, back through the stitch, yarn over through 2 loops, yarn over through the last 2 loops. And that's what a double crochet looks like. And you're going to continue making double crochets throughout the entire chain. And as I've mentioned before, I will have a crocheting for beginners video linked in the description box below. If you are not familiar with double crochet or any of these stitches, then that's totally fine. You can just practice with the crocheting for beginners video first and then come back to this video. It is beginner friendly, so you should be able to do this as long as you master the actual stitches. So again, you're going to continue with double crochet throughout the entire chain, and once you reach the very end, I'm going to be making my very last double crochet stitch of the row here. This is the very last chain for the row, and I'm making one last double crochet as I normally would. And since there's no more chains to go into, I'm going to chain 2, flip the project over, and show you what your first row of double crochet should look like. It should look something like this. Okay, so now we're going to start your second row of double crochet. So you're going to create another double crochet on top of the previous row of double crochet. But if you're not sure exactly where to make your next row, there's 2 openings in a double crochet, this really big one right here and then this smaller one on top. You're going to want to go into the smaller one on top, but be sure that you go through both of the pieces of yarn right here, because sometimes people go through only one of them like this, and that's not right. You want to go through both of them like this. So hopefully you're able to see the difference and you can avoid that common mistake. But again, you're going to go through the top portion of the double crochet that you made in the previous row, and you're going to make another double crochet within that opening. So you're going to now go through 2 loops, then yarn over, go through the last 2 loops, and you've made your first double crochet for your second row. And now you're going to go into the next stitch in the same area, the top portion of the double crochet, and then create another double crochet on top of it, or within it, I suppose. And this is what 2 rows of a double crochet look like. So that's what it looks like when they're stacked on top of one another. And we're going to continue with this pattern for a number of rows. Again, this will depend on your preference. I'm going to make about, I believe it was 5 rows of double crochets in this manner. So I'm just going to continue along with my second row right now by creating double crochets inside of every stitch I come across. And then once I reach the end of the row, then I'm going to do the exact same thing. I'm going to make sure that I go into the very last stitch of the row, and then I'm going to chain 2, 1, 2, then flip the project over, then double crochet into the very first stitch of the row right here, making sure that I go into the right opening of the double crochet in the previous row, and then I'm going to continue down this third row by going into every single stitch and creating a double crochet on top of it. Very, very easy. And again, I'm going to do this for a total of 5 rows, but that's just for me. If you saw the top that I made and you think that it's too much of a crop top and you would like it to be longer, then you may need to make more rows of double crochet. If you want it to be shorter, then make less rows of double crochet. It's totally up to you, but for me and this project, I did 5 rows of double crochet like this. And you may not think that there's anything special about what I just did, but it's going to come into play in a little bit. So I completed my 5 rows of double crochet, and it's just a rectangular piece right now, and that's perfectly fine. But the thing is, we're making a halter top and we need to create more of a triangular shape, and right now we're making a square shape, which is not what we want. We want to start bringing it in now, that way it's more triangular and it gets smaller and smaller with each row. That way when you put it against your body, it actually fits your neck properly and it's not drowning you. So what we're going to do now is make a really small change that will make a really big difference. So at the end of the row, you're going to no longer chain 2, you're only going to chain 1, and then you're going to still go into that first stitch as you normally would. However, now instead of going into the second stitch right here, you're going to skip it and go into that third stitch from the row. So again, you're going to skip that second stitch and go into this third stitch, and then you're going to create a double crochet, and that's it. That was the big change that you needed to make in order to make this a halter top as opposed to a square project. And what that is called is decreasing. And to decrease basically means to decrease the number of stitches per row. That way every row gets smaller and smaller as you keep going, and all you have to do is skip a stitch, and there you go. You're making less stitches per row, and that's exactly what you need to do in order to make a halter top. So after you've skipped that one stitch at the beginning of the row, then you're just going to continue throughout the rest of the row as you normally would, go into every single stitch, but once you reach the very end, you're going to chain one, flip the project over, go into the very first stitch of the next row, and then you're going to skip over this second stitch right here, right there, and you're going to go into this third stitch right here, and you're just going to create a double crochet from here. And there you go. Sorry, there's yarn sticking out. I actually had to reattach the yarn a couple of times because I used this color and this particular yarn in a different tutorial, and then I unraveled it, and then I tied the pieces back together, so that's why there's like yarn sticking out. But anyway, so again, after you've skipped that one stitch at the end of the row, you're going to continue down the rest of the row as you normally would, going into every single stitch. And then once you reach the end, you're just going to chain one, flip the project over, go into the first stitch, then skip over that second stitch, go into the third stitch, and create another double crochet, and then continue making double crochets throughout the entire row. And little by little, you'll start to see that the project is starting to pull inward and not be so even and straight as you would expect from trying to make a square project. So now it's little by little going to start looking like a halter top. It may take a number of rows before you actually start noticing a difference, but trust me, you'll see a difference. So again, I'm just going to continue down the row as I normally would, going into every single stitch until I reach the end. And I'm going to chain one, flip it over, go into the very first stitch of the next row, then skip over a stitch right here, go into that third stitch, create a double crochet, and then just continue making double crochets inside of every single stitch for the rest of the row. And again, it may take a number of rows before you start noticing, but since I have already completed a decent amount of rows so far, you could already see that the project is starting to look more triangular, or like be drawn in as opposed to just be straight up and down like a square. That's exactly what you want. The change is subtle because you're only really skipping one stitch per row. If you need it to be more drastic, then go ahead and skip 2 stitches per row, just not right next to each other. Maybe skip one at the beginning of the row and then one at the end of the row, or maybe one at the beginning and then one in the middle, just to make it so that it's not too obvious that you're skipping a stitch, because otherwise there'll be giant holes in your top and you don't want that. So this portion of the top is where we're making the square design by chaining 2 and then going into every single stitch. And then the slanted portion of the top is when we started to decrease. And then you're just going to continue with that pattern until the top of the halter top is short enough so that when you put the project against your body, you like the way it sits on your collarbone or your neck, and it's not like covering you too much and making it look weird. And then you're done with making the actual top itself. So again, this portion was the square portion, and then this is when we started decreasing, and then little by little it got smaller and smaller until finally I put the top against myself and I like the way that it fit. And that's all you have to do. I know it seems like it was super fast and easy, and yet it's taking you a while to make it. Believe me, it took me a while too, but I don't want to bore you with just showing you how I crochet rows and rows of double crochet. I'm pretty sure you get the point of what to do, so I just skipped ahead. All you have to do is follow that pattern until you're finally satisfied with the length of it and the size of it and the shape of it. And now it's time to make the straps. And all I'm doing for the straps is starting where I left off at the top of the top and creating a very long chain of about 150 chains. And the reason that I'm making such a long chain is because this is going to serve as both the neck and the back straps, plus it's going to lace at the bottom, so it needs to be very, very long. And once I've chained about 150 chains, then I go back on it using a slip stitch, and all a slip stitch is going through the chain and then yarning over and then going back through the chain and back through the loop that's in your hook. So just through a stitch, yarn over, through, back through a stitch, and then back through a loop. That's all a slip stitch is. And I slip stitch all the way down the chain until I get back to the halter top, and then I create a slip stitch from the chain into the top of the halter top. That way it's like really attached, and there, I've completed my very first strap. You can also just make a total of 4 smaller straps, so 2 neck straps and then 2 back straps, basically the same way that I made them, but I'm just going to make 2 in total. And okay, so here you have a number of options. You could crochet your way across the neckline and create another strap, or you could do what I'm doing and single crochet your way across the entire top until you get to this point and then create your second strap. Or you could just cut the yarn from the yarn ball right now and then reattach it to the other side and then make your second strap. Again, totally up to you, but I'm going to do the complicated one and single crochet my way all along the halter top until I get to the other side and then make the second strap. And you may wonder why on earth I am doing this when I really don't have to. It is because these single crochets make all the difference in terms of making your top look cleaner and crisper. See how nice and smooth these single crochets are making the sides, where the raw edges are more jagged and uneven. I mean, they're not horrible, but they're not as precise as the single crochets. So that's why I take the extra step and create single crochets along the entirety of the top. And all I'm doing is finding the nearest opening at the edge of the top and then working my way down by just making single crochets. Try not to skip too much space in between single crochets, because then that's going to warp your top and not make it look good. So I've done the entire side and now I'm at the edge, and once you reach the edge you want to make 2 single crochets inside of that edge and then start on the next side, and that will maintain its shape. And then I'm going to single crochet my way all along the bottom of the top and then the other side of the top until I reach this point, in which I will make another strap the exact same way that I did the first one. So now I'm working on the bottom portion, and then once I finish the bottom portion, then I'm going to do the side of the halter top, and then once I've done the side of the halter top, I'm going to finish my second strap, and then once I'm finished with my second strap, then I'm done crocheting. Woohoo! I have completed the halter top. So just a super quick recap, because that was a little fast and maybe a tiny bit confusing. So I finished all my rows for the halter top, and then I crocheted my first chain, and then I went down the left side of the halter top with a single crochet, then down the bottom portion of the halter top with a single crochet, then up the right side of the halter top with single crochet, and then from there I made my second strap, and then from that I flipped the project so that the back side of the halter top is facing me, and now I'm going to grab one strap and then bring it over to the opposite side, attach it to the bottom portion of the top, and then bring it back over to the opposite side again, and then attach it to the middle portion of the bottom of the top. And then once that's attached, then I bring it over to the opposite side one last time, and then I attach it to the bottom portion of the bottom of the top. And it's super easy. All you have to do now is pretty much the exact same thing, just on the opposite side with the opposite strap. So I'm going to grab this strap, bring it over across the top to the opposite side, and then attach it to the bottom portion of the top. And then I'm going to bring it on over to the opposite side once again and attach it to the middle portion of the bottom of the top. So about right here, trying to keep it as even with the other side as possible. And then I'm going to reach over one last time to the opposite end and then attach it to the bottom portion of the bottom of the top. And then once I've done that, then I'm done. Finally done with the halter top. Woohoo! It did take a while, even though this video is probably only like 20 minutes long. It took me probably like 2 hours to make, and that's okay. But the thing is, you may be wondering, why on earth is the yarn still attached to the halter top, and why didn't I cut it off? Well, that's because I'm going to, again, reuse this yarn. So I am going to unravel this halter top and then reuse the yarn for my next crochet project, because I cannot afford to continuously keep purchasing more and more yarn. And I know some people get sad because I put all this work into this project and it came out really nice, and I really like how it looks and fits and feels, but alas, I must use the yarn for another project, so this yarn is going to turn into something else the next time you see it. So that's kind of exciting and cool, but the main purpose of this video was to help you guys out, and I hope that it did. Remember that if you are a complete beginner or need a refresher on crochet, I do have Crocheting for Beginners videos, and they will be linked in the description box below. I also have a blog post with a written and diagram pattern on how to make a halter top that will be helpful for you as well, and that will be in the description box too. So go ahead and check those out, and also watch some of my other beginner-friendly tutorials. Or maybe if you're not necessarily a beginner or want to challenge yourself, I also have a bunch of other crochet tutorials that you can go ahead and check out. And if you do love crochet, then maybe you should consider sticking around and clicking the red subscribe button. But overall, I just want to say thank you for watching. If you enjoyed it, found it helpful, interesting, or entertaining, please give this video a thumbs up, and also click the red subscribe button if you have not already, so I can see you next time. Bye!